For Donald Trump's potential second term, his proposed immigration policies are set to be stricter than his first-term measures. These include 1. Mass deportations. Trump has announced plans for the largest deportation program in U.S. history, targeting undocumented immigrants, including those without criminal records. He also aims to use older statutes like the Alien Enemies Act to facilitate deportations 5-6. 2. Policy rollbacks. Key Biden-era immigration policies, such as humanitarian parole programs and temporary protected status (TPS) designations, would be reversed. Trump has criticized these programs for being overly lenient. 6. 3. End of birthright citizenship. Trump intends to end automatic citizenship for children born in the U.S. to undocumented parents. This controversial move could face significant legal challenges. 5-7. 4. Travel bans. Renewed and expanded travel bans would target certain countries, particularly Muslim-majority nations, for national security reasons. 7. 5. Merit-based system. A shift towards a system prioritizing American labor and values is planned, though specific criteria remain vague. Beneficiaries and those affected. Beneficiaries. U.S. workers in industries where undocumented immigrants are perceived as competition, as well as businesses advocating for stricter border enforcement, might gain economically. Negatively impacted, immigrant families, labor-intensive industries dependent on migrant workers, e.g. agriculture, construction, and international students seeking pathways to citizenship could face hardships. Economic impact. Trump's plans may have mixed economic consequences. Positive aspects. Reduction in illegal immigration might alleviate strain on public services in the short term. A merit-based system could bring highly skilled workers into the U.S. to bolster certain sectors. Negative aspects. Deporting millions of undocumented workers could disrupt industries reliant on their labor, causing shortages and price increases. Ending birthright citizenship might deter skilled immigrants who see the U.S. as an unwelcoming destination, reducing innovation and economic growth. 7. The proposed policies, while addressing border security concerns, could have significant social and legal implications, sparking debates over their feasibility and long-term impact on the U.S. economy and society. Implementing Trump's second-term immigration proposals would require substantial funding, staffing, infrastructure, and legal resources. Here's an analysis of the practicalities involved. Funding and resources needed. 1. Mass deportations. Cost. Estimates from Trump's first terms deporting a single undocumented immigrant can cost between $10,000 and $12,000, including apprehension, detention, and removal. 5-6. Deporting millions could exceed hundreds of billions of dollars. Staffing. Additional immigration officers, legal staff, and support personnel would be required, likely doubling or tripling the current workforce of agencies like ICE and CBP. Existing detention facilities would need significant expansion, or new facilities would need to be constructed, especially if large-scale deportations occur simultaneously. 2. Ending birthright citizenship. Implementation would require constitutional amendments or significant legal challenges to reinterpret the 14th Amendment, involving lengthy and costly litigation. 7. 3. Travel bans. These bans are less resource-intensive, mainly requiring coordination among the State Department, border officials, and the Department of Homeland Security, DHS. However, there could be costs related to legal defenses if these bans are challenged in court. 4. Immigration policy rollbacks. Reversing Biden-era policies, such as temporary protected status and humanitarian parole, involves administrative actions within DHS and USCIS. While not as costly as deportations, these shifts would require increased legal and administrative resources. Staffing and infrastructure. Human resources. DHS and ICE would need expanded hiring, possibly drawing from local law enforcement or the National Guard. Training these personnel for immigration enforcement would require months to years. Facilities. Additional detention centers, processing hubs, and deportation infrastructure would need to be built or leased, especially in regions with high undocumented populations. Legal and logistical hurdles. 1. Legal challenges. Many aspects of Trump's proposed policies, such as ending birthright citizenship and using the Alien Enemies Act, are legally contentious and would face prolonged court battles. 5.7 source. Immigration policy changes that affect U.S. employers or state rights could prompt lawsuits from affected stakeholders. 2. Coordination. Collaboration across federal, state, and local agencies would be essential. However, not all states may cooperate with mass deportation efforts, complicating enforcement. Timeline for implementation. Immediate actions, such as issuing executive orders on day one, could be implemented within weeks, affecting travel bans and enforcement priorities. Larger-scale efforts like mass deportations and constitutional changes would likely take years due to logistical and legal barriers. Realistic feasibility. While parts of the plan could be enacted swiftly, fully implementing Trump's agenda would be a monumental task. It would strain the federal budget, workforce, and public systems while sparking intense political and legal battles. Past efforts, such as Trump's family separation policy, faced significant resource constraints and backlash, hinting at similar challenges for broader proposals. 5 source, 7 source. The practical realities of implementing a large-scale immigration enforcement program involve significant logistical, legal, and social challenges. Here's a breakdown of how this might be enacted and its broader implications. Practical steps for enforcement. 1. Identifying undocumented immigrants. Databases. ICE would use existing data, including visa overstays, employer records, and law enforcement databases, to identify undocumented immigrants. Enhanced surveillance, audits, and data sharing agreements could expand this capacity. Challenges. Many undocumented immigrants live off the grid, avoiding official interactions. Accurate identification without infringing on privacy or mistakenly targeting legal residents would be difficult. 2. Locating and apprehending. Local collaboration. Federal authorities might seek cooperation from local law enforcement through programs like 287G, which deputize local officers to assist in immigration enforcement. Workplace raids. ICE could increase raids on industries with large immigrant workforces, such as agriculture, construction, and hospitality. Challenges. Many cities, sanctuary cities, refuse to cooperate with federal immigration enforcement, complicating efforts to locate and apprehend individuals. 3. Deportation logistics. Processing. Detention centers would need to hold immigrants while their cases are processed. Legal backlogs in immigration courts could significantly delay this process. Transportation. Deporting individuals would require a robust logistical operation, including flights, buses, and staff to manage removals. Estimated number of immigrants affected. Overall population. Approximately 10.5 to 11 million undocumented immigrants live in the U.S. 6. Source groups. If Trump's policies prioritize those with criminal records or recent border entries, the initial group might be in the millions. Expanding enforcement to all undocumented immigrants would aim for a larger pool. Impact on cities and businesses. 1. Economic effects on businesses. Industries reliant on immigrant labor, such as agriculture, construction, and hospitality, would face workforce shortages. Undocumented immigrants make up about 24% of farm workers and a significant portion of workers in low-wage industries. Source, 7 source. Businesses could incur fines or shutdowns due to increased scrutiny and enforcement. 2. Local governments and communities. Sanctuary cities. Many cities that limit cooperation with ICE could face cuts to federal funding or legal battles. Local governments may resist enforcement actions that disrupt communities. Social strain. Families could be separated, increasing demand for social services and support for children left behind. 3. Public backlash. Intensified enforcement could lead to protests, civil disobedience, and lawsuits. Public sentiment in many regions may oppose aggressive actions, adding political pressure. Implemented challenges. Resource needs. Current ICE staffing and detention capacities are insufficient to handle millions of deportations. Expanding these resources would require years and billions of dollars. Legal bottlenecks. Immigration courts are already backlogged, with over 1.5 million pending cases. Mass deportations would overwhelm the system unless due process rights are curtailed, which would likely provoke legal challenges. 7 source. Resistance. Sanctuary policies in cities and states could delay or obstruct federal efforts. Employers and community organizations might also resist cooperating with enforcement. Realistic feasibility. While some measures like workplace raids or targeted deportations could be enacted quickly, a program of the scale proposed by Trump would face substantial hurdles. The societal and economic disruption, legal battles, and resistance from local governments and businesses suggest that implementation would be fraught with challenges. The potential benefits of a large-scale mass deportation initiative must be analyzed alongside its limitations and broader consequences. Here's an overview of potential benefits and their practical implications. Potential benefits. 1. Reduction in unauthorized presence. Removing a significant portion of the undocumented population could decrease strains on certain public systems, such as healthcare, education, or welfare services, depending on state policies. However, undocumented immigrants often pay taxes without accessing many benefits, which complicates the financial impact assessment. 2. Job availability. Proponents argue that mass deportations could open low-wage job opportunities for U.S. citizens, potentially reducing unemployment rates in specific sectors. However, many economists note that undocumented immigrants often fill jobs Americans are unwilling to take, particularly in agriculture and hospitality. 7 source. 3. Targeted criminal deportations. Deporting individuals with serious criminal records could potentially reduce certain types of crime. Studies have shown that immigrants, including undocumented ones, generally commit crimes at lower rates than native-born Americans, but prioritizing criminals for deportation may yield localized benefits. 4. Enhanced border security perception. Mass deportations, combined with stricter border enforcement, might deter future unauthorized immigration. This could improve public confidence in the government's ability to manage immigration systems. Impact on crime rates. Crime reduction. Targeted deportations of individuals with criminal records could marginally reduce crimes associated with gangs or repeat offenders. Broader evidence. Multiple studies indicate that immigration does not lead to increased crime. In fact, areas with higher immigrant populations often experience lower crime rates. As such, mass deportations may not significantly impact overall crime trends. 6 source. Deporting non-violent offenders or individuals with no criminal records might not yield any measurable crime reduction and could even harm community policing efforts, as immigrant communities may become less willing to cooperate with law enforcement. Impact on national security. Removing individuals deemed threats, such as those with connections to extremist groups, could enhance national security. However, most undocumented immigrants are not involved in terrorism or espionage. Profiling based on nationality or religion, as in travel bans, may have limited effectiveness and could violate civil liberties. 7 source. Caveats and trade-offs. 1. Economic impact. Deporting millions of undocumented immigrants could remove a substantial portion of the workforce, particularly in industries reliant on immigrant labor, causing economic disruptions, increased prices, and slower growth. 6 source. 2. Cost of enforcement. The high costs of apprehending, detaining, and deporting millions of people, estimated in the hundreds of billions of dollars, might outweigh any economic or security benefits. 3. Social consequences. Family separations and disruptions to immigrant communities could exacerbate societal tensions, harming the social fabric and undermining trust in government institutions. Conclusion. While there may be localized benefits, such as minor reductions in crime or more job availability for certain groups, the broader evidence suggests that mass deportations on this scale would have limited impact on crime and national security. The significant economic costs, legal challenges, and potential disruptions make such a policy highly contentious and difficult to justify solely on the basis of potential benefits. If local communities, businesses, or law enforcement agencies refuse to cooperate with federal deportation efforts, significant conflicts could arise between these entities and the federal government. Here's how this might unfold. Potential consequences for non-cooperation. 1. Loss of federal funding. The federal government could threaten to withhold funding from states, cities, or law enforcement agencies that refuse to assist with immigration enforcement. This approach was attempted during Trump's first term with sanctuary cities. Courts have previously ruled against broad defunding measures, limiting the federal government's ability to impose such penalties. Legal challenges would likely follow if these threats are renewed. 6-7 source. 2. Increased federal presence. If local authorities refuse to cooperate, the federal government might deploy more immigration and customs enforcement agents to enforce policies directly, bypassing local entities. This would strain ICE resources, as it would need to expand operations significantly. 6 source. 3. Public and legal backlash. Sanctuary jurisdictions and advocacy groups could mount legal challenges against forced compliance efforts. Public protests and civil disobedience might escalate, particularly in areas with strong support for immigrant rights. 4. Employer crackdowns. Businesses refusing to comply with workplace immigration enforcement could face fines or other penalties. However, widespread crackdowns could harm local economies and provoke pushback from business coalitions. 7 source. Mechanisms to force compliance. 1. Legislative changes. Trump could work with Congress to pass laws mandating local cooperation with ICE, such as expanding the scope of federal programs like 287G. However, passing such laws might face resistance in Congress, especially if it is divided. 2. Executive orders. Trump might use executive orders to direct federal agencies to prioritize enforcement in non-cooperative jurisdictions or to reallocate resources to pressure localities. 3. Targeted legal action. The Justice Department could sue cities or states for obstructing federal immigration laws. While the federal government holds significant authority in immigration matters, courts have recognized limits to coercing local governments. Impact on local communities and businesses. 1. Public services. Threatened loss of federal funding could jeopardize critical services like housing, healthcare, and education in sanctuary jurisdictions. However, many states and cities are likely to resist these penalties in court, as seen during Trump's first term. 2. Economic effects. Industries reliant on immigrant labor, e.g. agriculture, construction, hospitality, could face disruptions from increased workplace raids and enforcement pressure. 3. Community police relations. Forcing local law enforcement to act as immigration enforcers could strain trust between police and immigrant communities, leading to reduced crime reporting and cooperation on investigations. Feasibility and resistance. Forcing compliance would require significant federal resources and face resistance from local governments, advocacy groups, and businesses. Sanctuary cities have historically succeeded in maintaining their policies, citing legal and moral grounds. Trump's administration would likely struggle to compel broad compliance without substantial legislative changes or favorable court rulings. Ultimately, attempts to enforce compliance could deepen divisions between federal and local governments, while creating economic and social disruption in affected communities.